All right. And hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. With me, I have independent director Jason Pitts with me again, and we're going to be doing a spoiler review for Malignant. This is actually James Wan's new horror movie. I did a non spoiler review yesterday, but we wanted to go ahead and do a spoiler review today because we feel like that there's a lot that we could actually talk about with this movie. We were very interested in this movie. This movie also had a budget of $40 million and budget. So let's go ahead and get on with it. So I'm going to let you go on ahead and get your initial thoughts out. Then after that, I'll go on ahead and do mine.
Okay,
And then,
sounds good. I actually hadn't heard of this film until I went to see Candyman, and I saw the trailer for it at the beginning of Candyman, and that got me really excited. I'm a huge James Wan fan. I love Saw. I love The Conjuring 1 and 2. I'm a big fan of Deep Silence. So his previous work, I'm a huge fan of. I had really high expectations going into this one. Really excited about him directing another film, and the trailer really did its job. I got hyped from the trailer. There's some great stuff in the trailer. So I was very disappointed with how the film turned out. I really enjoyed the idea behind it. I got to give him props for trying to do something different, but it kind of suffers the same problems that The Conjuring 3 suffers from, and that's the film doesn't know what it wants to be. Like, is it a supernatural thing? Is it a slasher film? And when you do like these hybrid type things like this one and Malignant and The Conjuring 3, you got to be really careful with it because it just doesn't work sometimes, and it doesn't work in this instance as well. At the first half of the movie is very like supernatural, like a haunting type feel to it. A lot of supernatural things happening, and then the movie just kind of takes a left turn and becomes a slasher film. After that, the reveal is you see it coming a mile away, and it doesn't make sense with some of the stuff that they set the film up with in the first act. So I'm a big story guy. When the story doesn't make sense, we got problems. The film is amazingly shot. It has some really nice, deep focus shots down some long dark hallways, especially in the first act again. And so it's beautifully made. There's a sequence in a prison that is absolutely amazing. It has moments of brilliance in it, but the film as a whole just doesn't work,
no.
and it leaves a lot of problems and questions. So
So,
that's my take on it.
right, exactly. And I touched on this yesterday, but just to give a little bit more of a background and stuff like that, since this is a spoiler review and things like that. Now, the critics and stuff like that were actually laughing at the screening premiere of it.
Mm-hmm.
And WB pretty much was trying to hide this film because of the fact that it had poor PR behind it. People were laughing at the private screenings. Not only were they laughing at the private screenings, but they didn't really do what it needed to do, and people were laughing, and that's not a horror movie's actually making it laugh unless it's like a horror movie that's made to be funny and certain aspects and stuff like that. But this is not one of those movies that is supposed to be funny.
Definitely not.
But it's also corny on some of the dialogue. The dialogue is really bad in this movie. Then it also cuts to the dramatic stuff, like I mentioned yesterday as well, where it's like I could be saying, John's going to go get milk. Dum, dum, dum. John's going to get milk. And then it could also, then there's also another scene where somebody gets killed, and it gives you that Stranger Things 80s kind of flavor, kind of music theme when somebody gets, you know what I'm talking about? Like you see someone die. I'm like, what the heck?
I had a huge problem with the soundtrack with the score of this movie as well.
Yeah.
It was very similar to Saw, but when this type of music was used in Saw, it really worked because it was like whenever
it described the character.
Yeah, whenever they revealed the twist in Saw, and then you had those montage of like flashback moments that were clues. They did this throughout the entire Saw franchise and just about every film, where you just have this upbeat kind of rock music almost
Right.
during those sequences, and it really worked there. But they use the same type of music in like creepy, weird instances, like when you're supposed to be freaked out or like you're trying to build suspense, and that music just did not work in
No.
this film. And it worked in Saw, but it didn't work in this.
No, definitely not. And another thing I want to mention is this. I knew about this project way before any trailers were being done and everything, because that's why James Wan wasn't attached to direct the third Conjuring film, because he was busy making this film. And I'm like, okay, I'm okay with somebody else directing this while he's going off and doing his own thing. And this was also made during the pandemic as well, and keeping everything on the down low as to what this film was about. Also, too, he also wanted to play homage to the Gillios genre, which is the Black Gloves, Black Mask kind of killers. Also, too, like I was telling Jason, this also is part of the Italian genre of slasher films. And here's the thing, I'm in full agreement with you when it winds up becoming what we thought was supposed to be a supernatural type of film, and then all of a sudden it becomes like a supernatural slasher movie. And everything, like a psychological slasher movie is what I called it yesterday. Yeah. But the movie opens up, and I like how it actually opens up to where it doesn't reveal too much. Basically, you have these this insane asylum and everything, and then you see these doctors talking back and forth about how they're having this one person about having a hard time with this one patient named Gabriel. And then you see them, it has this little 80s kind of flavor to it, because they actually paint the scene with the red light to signify blood, which is something that I really appreciated with that. It actually signifies the blood. And then it cuts into where the doctors open up the room, but you don't see Gabriel. You just see limbs being broken from where he's actually breaking people's arms and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, okay, so is this telekinesis? Is this something else on the supernatural end of the spectrum and everything, where basically it might be telekinesis? It could be some monster that's actually stronger and trying to contain it. What is this being that's in the dark? And you don't see that until the reveal. And then, like you said before,
there is a shot through like a sheet or a curtain or something where you kind of see him a little bit,
right,
in that sequence.
But at the same time, you don't really see much,
right? Because you don't see a lot.
And at first, I thought it was like this blob kind of monster kind of thing whenever you see it. Then also, too, I love how the opening credits are, where basically you're seeing certain things that they're doing, but you don't know what directions that they're going in. Because you're seeing limbs being taken off from this gory monster kind of effect. You're seeing things being separated. Then you see other elements, and then also too, you see documentation of what the doctors and them are actually doing in that insane asylum, and also too electroshock therapy. Then you see that's also another thing too that actually happens. Gabriel's talking through the radio that they have, the AM/FM radio that they have in the basement of the asylum. So you have that little bit of a horror flavor, which glues you into it because you're not sure what you're going to be getting. But then after that, it winds up being totally something different, And then after that happens, it goes into being the 28 years later, where a pregnant woman named Madison Lake is living in Seattle after ending 2 years of miscarriages, which has strained her marriage to her husband, Derek Mitchell. During an argument, Derek smashes Madison's head against the wall, which she locks herself in the bedroom. And, I really like how it sets up how the husband is actually the ball bag, the douchebag that is the abusive husband. She comes home early. He's watching UFC. And then, they get into this argument and everything because she turns off the TV. And then he's like, come on, Madison, how many times do we have to go through this again? We have to go through this whole entire thing with the miscarriage and things like that. So I'm like, okay, is there something going on with her to where she's having miscarriages? How is this linked to Gabriel and everything? That's what was going through my mind. And then also, too, her head bleeding. And then when she's having these visions of Gabriel killing someone, I'm thinking, okay, is that whole entire deal where maybe Gabriel's actually feeding off of her, but it has like this shocker kind of vibe from Wes Craven, where you
Yeah.
basically have the killer giving the vision to the other character and seeing that person kill. So I'm wondering maybe that was too much for her brain to take in. Maybe that's why she was bleeding from the back of her head. I was just going off of pure speculation at that time. But I like the fact that we are introduced to the husband. We know that he's a douchebag. He winds up punching her in the stomach, which I was really ticked off. And everything, like
Like
her,
everyone's supposed to hate him.
right. And, I was really pissed off with her husband. I'm like, okay, I hope that he gets what's coming to him and everything, because he does deserve it. But what did you think about the opening act as far as that goes?
So I thought the opening act was pretty good. I think this insane asylum sequence really felt like a throwback to like some old Frankenstein mad scientist type movie to me. It felt like that quite a bit. I didn't like just because I know where the movie went to, but the sequences later on with her husband when like the TV's turning on and it feels like he's being haunted. There's something going on. There's a scene where the TV turns on and the lights are off and he sees like a woman sitting on the couch, and then he turns the light on and then that person disappeared. She's not there anymore. And then there's an indentation on the couch, and then and then it goes away like there's a ghost sitting on the couch and it stands up. So where the movie ends up going, that sequence completely does not make sense. Because there's nothing supernatural about what is happening in this movie, as it turns out. Gabriel supposedly has some kind of power over electronics, which again doesn't make much sense. But as far as manifesting a ghost that can actually impact the couch and leave this indentation, there's no way that she could have disappeared off the couch that fast. That body, because it's physical. It's not
Right.
It ended up not being anything supernatural at all. So
No.
that whole thing does not make sense at all in the entire scope of the movie. So I did not like that. I also, I think that they should have explained the whole electromagnetic power that he has a little bit better. I think they just briefly glossed over it. That whole thing did not work for me.
You see, I was wondering too, maybe with the electric shock therapy, maybe it did something to Gabriel to where it gave him that kind of power to where it did it. That's where my imagination was going with it, because like I said, I was going off of pure speculation on that. But like you said too, it feels like a supernatural movie at first because of the fact that we have this ghost type of being that sits on the couch and then all of a sudden this person disappears. And that did creep me out. I'm not going to lie. That part, I'm like, okay, so we are going with a little bit of a Conjuring vibe to it. But if you're going into, now this is for the audience though, if you're thinking you're going into this movie as like a Conjuring kind of vibe with that slow tension build up and that tension being released, no, this is complete opposite of what The Conjuring is. But there is that aspect of The Conjuring in it, especially with those long hallway shots. And also, too, this woman lives in this huge mansion as well. And I like how the camera pan angles to the top when she's by herself. And it shows her going from room to room and everything, and trying to run away from this being and everything because the door opens and everything else. But I really like that sequence of her going to different rooms and showing how big that layout is of her mansion and everything. I thought that was really good. There's also another pan angle where basically the camera takes an angle to where the wall is and it's going into the next room. I like that. James Wan is good when it comes down to camera angles and things like that. But as far as
it was shot amazingly well. It looked amazing, but like I said, there's just some major problems and just some logic problems. Like, okay, so spoiler. Here we go. There's nothing supernatural. She she had a Siamese twin that she absorbed in the womb, and she basically had a growth on her back that was another human being. And these scientists and doctors did experiments on her and this other child, which was named Gabriel. They ended up cutting him out of her mostly. There was a part that they couldn't get to without killing her, and so they just basically pushed it into her brain, into the back of her brain. And when the husband throws her against the wall and she hits her head on the back of the wall, that wakes Gabriel up. And he's able to take control of her body and contort it in weird ways, dislocate all of her joints, and she basically becomes like this crazy slasher. And then from that point in the movie, it's a slasher film. And some major just logic problems with that. The main one is she's had three miscarriages, and so she would have had all kinds of scars on her back. The character had no recollection of any of this, no clue that she had a previous twin attached to her. So she's been to the doctor a lot with these miscarriages and these pregnancies. There would have been scars all over her back from the surgeries. She's got the back of her head bleeding through the whole movie from when she hits it on the wall, and there's never any like medical, like she never goes to the doctor, talk about a concussion. It's constantly bleeding through the whole movie.
Right.
And
even her sister brings it up though too. She goes, "You're bleeding in the back of your head. What's going on?" And she just pretty much just ignores the fact that the back of her head is bleeding.
It's completely it's like, why not go to the doctor and get it checked out? I mean,
exactly. It's like, my head's bleeding. It's perfectly normal. But, it's totally ridiculous. But, then there's also another thing that I wanted to bring up too, like you mentioned before, with them pushing Gabriel's other half back into her and everything and stuff like that. I mean, that part was actually pretty cool to see, but there was like, to me, as great as a reveal that I wanted it to be, because I was thinking, okay, is it something more? Is it something more with supernatural? Because even though it's a slasher film and everything, maybe she's seeing visions for a reason. Maybe somehow or another these two killers this person is linked up. And I also like the visuals about how all of a sudden the room disappears around her, starts decaying, and then she winds up in the other person's room. I love that.
Yeah,
I love the visuals
awesome.
for that. Those were some awesome visuals. But the delivery of everything was really bad. And also, too, there's a scene with the cop and everything in this movie where basically he winds up, there's a scene in there where basically he says, "Yeah, I told you that it was Gabriel," or something to that effect. I'm like, wait, you never mentioned that at all. That character never even told you anything yet or anything like that. And also, too, I was hoping for a little bit more of a supernatural thing inside the asylum whenever the sister goes in there and finds the file on her sister.
Yeah.
I
had a problem with that too.
Right.
Like this huge old building that's been abandoned. There's stuff everywhere, boxes everywhere, and she just happens to walk in and go straight to the right box with the right file in it. It's just ridiculous.
It really is, because I was like, okay, good. We're going to be exploring the old asylum. Is there going to be some ghost in there? Is there going to be something more super? And no, there's nothing there. She goes straight to the box, like you said. It's not shot that even that great either. It goes into like a straightforward shot camera angle of her opening up the box, and then she winds up finding the VHS tapes, and then that's when she goes on ahead and goes back to her parents' house and finds out that Madison is actually adopted and everything. And then also too, she's wondering who Gabriel is, how is she talking to him and everything, and thought it was just her imaginary friend all this time and everything that was implanted into her brain. And it kind of has like that dark, evil, drop dead Fred kind of feel to it whenever I saw that whole entire aspect where Madison's talking to this being. And I'm like, okay, so is this her or this not her? It's very confusing and conflicted with what they want to do. It's not even cohesive. Everything about this film is very uncohesive.
Very, yeah.
Yeah.
You're correct. Why did she park on the edge of a cliff?
I don't know.
Another inch and you're going to drive off the cliff.
Same reason how we didn't know about one of those aliens from A Quiet Place 2, why all of a sudden that one boat shows up to the lighthouse and everything. It's one of those things that I don't know. It's just weird on how they actually set that part off and how they executed that. I thought that the other characters in this film was like very, very one note. And everything. There was no layers to these characters, nothing at all. The other detective seemed like he was just wanting to flirt with the sister and everything too. And I'm like, and then there's actually supposed to be like a love interest with that, and then it's forced.
Yeah.
And you can definitely tell.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The characters are definitely one dimensional. And honestly, I don't even think the acting was that great.
No.
The only spectacular thing about this movie was the cinematography, and that was pretty much it. And maybe a kernel of a interesting idea that definitely needed to be more developed. But I will say that there's a lot of really cool throwbacks to other movies. Like, I think that Gabriel's voice, when it comes over either the phone or the radio, those moments were pretty effective, and I think it felt a lot like Scream to me. Did it to you?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it had that Scream kind of flavor to it whenever it comes over the radio and everything. So yeah, I definitely got a little bit of a Scream vibe from it.
Yeah.
Also, too, the visuals for his makeup look really good. I even said this
basket case from the early '80s.
Yeah, it also reminds me of that, but it also reminds me of Ben Affleck's The Town with the mask on when they're robbing the bank, and they have that the black mask and the skull and stuff like that. It kind of reminds me of that mask at the very beginning, and they just brought it into like a CGI kind of element, and I love that. I love the CGI when it was revolving around what the killer actually looks like. So I actually appreciated that. I also thought that the part where they actually used Seattle with this, where the new city is built on top of the old city, showing some history of Seattle, giving us a little homage to Seattle. Then you also have wondering, why is this killer going after this one person who's a tour guide in this underground city that's giving tours? And I'm like, how is this linked up? Because they don't even mention why that's even linked up to anything.
Yeah. Until later in the movie.
Right.
After, because she's the mom for them.
Right. And I even got that confused. I'm like, did Gabriel kidnap the daughter or what? Because they both look similar. They look
very similar, yeah. And honestly, it could be bad casting, because I thought that the mom looked even younger than the sister, honestly.
Right.
But she was supposedly only 15 when she had them. So she was pretty young. But yeah, she definitely looked younger than the sister, or than the main character, than the daughter. So I don't know.
And then there's also the other thing too, where Gabriel's actually keeping the mother locked up upstairs. Then as the detectives are talking about what they found out and everything, and also too with her being adopted, that's when, of course, as they're getting ready to leave, the mother falls down from the ceiling, and then that's when we have that silly music that plays that I mentioned, and then they wind up taking her into custody because they think that she was the one that, in fact, is the killer. Also, too, the way they what they're using for a knife is basically a trophy that one of the other nurses from the asylum got, and takes that little nurse cross off of the trophy, and he sharpens it and turns it into a knife. So, what do you think about
that? It's kind of dumb, but oh well.
Yeah. But then you wind back to the other scene, though, that I mentioned. So now she's in the interrogation room, and then you're seeing Gabriel call the detective and everything on his phone, and the only one that's not really believing anything is his partner. He's like, no, this is our suspect. This is the person that we have. This is who we have. And then all of a sudden the phone starts ringing, and then of course he answers the phone, and it's Gabriel, and he goes, well, she didn't know that I was the one who had the woman tied up in the attic and everything, and I have all my clothes up there. And then I'm like, okay, so that pretty much proves that she's not the one that did it. So why are you still having this woman in custody if you don't have your actual suspect now that you have someone over the phone? Why is she being held in prison?
Yeah.
That
scene was really, really, really ridiculous. How did that happen? Like, I know he's supposedly using electromagnetic airwaves or whatever and projecting his voice through the phone, but he's in the back of her skull. So I guess it's some form of telekinesis, right?
Not unless her brainwaves
Brainwaves
is giving off some type of electromagnetic energy to where they're doing something like that, because it is two different brain formulations of the brain.
I can almost buy that. The problem that I have is later on when they do the reveal and they're like, okay, he is in her brain, in the back of her mind, and is able to take over her body. And when he does that, she goes into like a trance-like state, right?
Right.
So in that scene, she is not in a trance-like state. She has like this weird, creepy smile on her face, and she's all like, she seems like she's enjoying it, and she's all like, he wants to talk to you. So she may not be conscious that he's in her head at that moment, but she is not in a trance. Like the movie later on says that she becomes like whenever he takes her over. So right. I don't know. There's just so many things about this movie that just don't add up to me.
Well, another thing too was I thought it was like a split personality type of thing that they were going for as well.
Yeah.
I'm like, does this woman now have a split personality?
Yeah.
And everything, and then whenever she bangs her head up against the wall, does that signify that they're actually hurting that split personality?
Ultimately, yes. It's a Dr. Jekyll Hyde movie,
right?
But
so it's weird. But like you said,
weird. Yeah.
But not weird in a good way, because if it was weird in a good way, we would actually talk positively about it, and the payoff would be great. But
it's weird in it doesn't make sense way.
No, it doesn't. And when she's in that trance inside the thing, it looks like she's breakdancing rather than doing something really creepy, because I definitely like the scene. I thought that scene was pretty cool, but you can't help but laugh a little bit because of the fact that the way that the cinematography actually is, and when she's killing all these other people in the jail and everything, and she's doing like a John Wick kind of movement, but also too kind of like breakdancing, and then she's also stabbing people and things like, just using her, disembobulating their heads, their limbs from their bodies, stuff like that, giving her different type of strength that we got from the very beginning of the film and things like that. I thought that was weird. I didn't really think that was it was a good scene, don't get me wrong, but it could have actually enhanced better if it was a different way around of doing it.
I think it was one of the best scenes in the movie.
Right.
I thought it's pretty awesome. My biggest problem with it is she just rips through like 30 people in like 2 seconds, like, I don't know, like 5 minutes, right? Just clears out the cell, then goes out into the police
department.
Just takes out like 15 cops, and then has problems with our 2 cop heroes, and like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
and she lets.
Why couldn't she kill these 2 guys? These 2 people.
You see, I was thinking to myself whenever I saw like the 2 detectives, maybe she was getting way of Gabriel, like where her psychosis was pretty much trying to spare them in a sense.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's just me, once again, just using my psychological brain, sci-fi kind of brain and everything. Yeah. But, I was just trying to think of anything I could think of to where it can actually make sense, even though it doesn't. But I thought the police station scene was really good.
It was.
Stuff like that, too. Yeah, it's ridiculous, but it's actually pretty cool to actually see. But she's very OP, very overpowered when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Then once you get into the hospital scene and things like that, you realize that Gabriel now wants to go after her biological mother. And so basically now it's up to the sister to try and fight this being by herself without any cops or anything like that to stop Gabriel and everything. And also, too, it's like that Nightmare on Elm Street 2 kind of vibe where she's trying to talk Gabriel down.
Yeah.
Just like how I forgot the character's names from Nightmare on Elm Street 2, but I know Jesse was the main character in that movie. But just like how that character was trying to talk Jesse down and trying to say, hey, look, I know there's something good inside of you, Jesse. Stop this. You're stronger than he is. Right.
Fight Freddy off, yeah. Very similar. And then her adopted sister did the same thing. And it was really the realization that Gabriel basically killed her unborn children by siphoning their life force or energy or whatever, feeding off of them. That gave her, the motivation to fight him.
Right, because those were her kids which made sense though. That part made sense because
that's cool.
Yeah, because it gives her because there's no woman that's if anything happens to her kids, she goes apeshit on them. So that's pretty much what I got out of that. It's like, okay, so she had those miscarriages because of Gabriel. Gabriel was getting stronger because of the fact that he was feeding off those fetuses and everything, able to get stronger. And if it wasn't for him, she would actually had kids, and maybe her husband might not. Well, he still is a douchebag no matter what. Yeah. But maybe her husband might still be alive. But everything was because of Gabriel. And then so she winds up getting stronger. She fights off Gabriel to the point where she gives Gabriel that illusion that he kills the mother, and then kills the sister by throwing this giant hospital bed and everything on top of her sister, and then blows out her sister's brains. And then all of a sudden she goes, well, now I have the power. Now I can do what you did to me, and I don't need you anymore. And, what did you think about that?
I thought it was really cool, like just turning the tables, using the same power against him. Like everything that he thought that he didn't really happen, and she actually had him captured in their own mind. So yeah, I thought that was cool. I liked it. My question is, and they don't touch on it at all, is what happens now. Like how do you, like, we have a trail of bodies 50 people deep, right? Like where do you go from here? Like who do they arrest? Like somebody's got to be held accountable for that. Like the science and the all the evidence points to her. You got a couple of people that can testify that it wasn't really her, that it was some weird deformed baby taking her over. Like I'm trying to understand. Like I'm trying to think of like what happens afterwards. Does she go to jail?
Like, I don't know. That's what I was thinking too. Like, where does she go to another insane asylum? Does she go? Where does this character go from here? Also, too, she locks. Right. Also, too, Gabriel winds up getting locked up in the mind center of her head. And goes, I will get out. Because but until then, you're locked up.
I'll be ready.
I'll be ready.
Yeah, I'll be ready.
I'm like, so now she has to battle him in her head rather than him being woken up again and everything. But I really wish that this film, like, I was trying to find some type of some type of thing that I could actually give a positive review to yesterday. The only things I could give a positive review for, the only positives, the camera angles, that prison scene, and the acting of the main actress. And
I really like one other thing that I really like that I haven't heard anybody talk about in any review or anything.
The visuals.
I love the title.
The title is great.
Malignant. When you're talking about a malignant cancer that needs to be cut out, I mean, it is. The title was brilliant with as far as what the idea is. So yeah, I really enjoyed the title. I thought that was a really, really good thing.
Right, because even in the very beginning, the nurse winds up saying, we need to cut the cancer out.
One other that I want to mention is the movie does have some slight social commentary in it with domestic abuse with her husband, and also I even think that there was some intended social commentary on abortion in this film, like my body, my choice type of thing. Like women fighting for the rights to control their own bodies. She literally does that in this film. Like she's fighting to control her own body from Gabriel. So, and just the fact that there was miscarriages and pregnancies and stuff like that, I don't think that any of that was coincidental. I think it was all part of some social commentary undertones in it that I want to give them props for. So that was cool.
Right. I felt that way too. It was like that Me Too kind of feel to it, to be honest with you, where my body, my choice, stuff like that, consequences behind doing abortions and stuff like that. And I really did. I did feel like it might have been something to do with that and everything, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But, that's just going through the deeper ends of the spectrum of what we think and everything. But, James Wan is a great director. But when it comes down to this particular film and this style that he was trying to do, it works on paper, but from paper to screen, it just doesn't work. It just falls flat. It just feels like it's all over the place. It just doesn't have that cohesiveness as a Conjuring franchise, or it doesn't also have the same thing with the Saw franchise. And also too, I appreciated what he did with the Furious 7 movie, coming off of that movie and everything, and then also going back into this horror genre that we all know him for. But with this one, it's not as great as I wanted it to be as far as passion project goes and things like that. But still, would I go and see a Malignant 2? No, probably not, unless they actually explain something or reiterate some things that happened in this film and try to explain it a lot better. Then yeah, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah, it definitely needed some more work in the screenwriting development phase. There was a lot of stuff to work out before they started shooting.
Definitely.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So, any other final thoughts as far as this film goes or anything like that?
Just a disappointment. Really cool idea that should have been developed more. Great cinematography, bad acting, bad story. Like, I don't know. It's just, a little bit below mediocre for me. I think I would have given it like maybe a 4 out of 10.
I would. Wow. Okay. What about out of 5? What would you do out of 5?
Probably 2.
Yeah.
2 out of 5.
That's what I'm giving it. Matter of fact, it's like a 2 out of 5 for me.
Yeah.
But I know everybody. I know that this film might be very diverse as far as
there's a lot of people who love it.
Right. I could see this being a cult classic coming up later on in the future and everything. I could see that. But for right now, it's very divided as far as the horror fan community goes. Either you love it or you don't love it. I can actually understand why you love it. I can understand why some people don't like it. But still, all movies are subjective. And if you like this movie, tell us in the comments below what you liked and what you didn't like. Tell us in the comments below, because we're curious as to what you guys think too. So my question is this: where can everybody follow you at?
I'm on Facebook. Just search me up, Jason Pitts. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. You can just search for me. I don't know my handle names off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, with that being said, guys, that's going to be it for our Malignant spoiler review. If you guys want to donate to the page, all you have to do is go to www.gofundme.com/Movie Lovers Podcast. Of course, guys, we are actually doing a charity event for the people that lost their homes in Louisiana and stuff like that through the Red Cross. You can also, that's how you do that. You're just going ahead and purchase a Scentsy from Two Blur Girls Podcast, Tamra, and basically you buy a Scentsy. All proceeds go over to the Red Cross. And then, of course, guys, you can go on ahead and follow me on Movie Lovers, TV Lovers Unite on Facebook, Instagram, and Instagram underneath the same brand name. And then, of course, on Movie Lovers Unit on Twitter. If you're a sponsor would like to get on, would like to sponsor us, or if you would like to be a guest on my show, just go ahead, email me at movieloversunite@gmail.com. And then, of course, Tuesday night, I actually have actress Rivka Reyes from School of Rock. She's coming on for a very special one-on-one interview. We'll be taking questions, Q&As towards the end of the show. So go on ahead, check us out there. Then, you guys can always go on ahead, follow me underneath Movie Lovers Unit on Twitter. So that's everywhere that you can reach me at. It's been real. It's been fun. I can't wait to do this again. Thank you, Jason, for doing this review.
Thanks for having me. Anytime.
All right. And always until next time. Bye bye.